Thanks for joining us this morning. If everybody can see and hear us, perhaps just pop something in the chat box for us. Let us know where you're joining us from today. But thank you for taking time to join us. I'm just going to get some slides up on the screen for us to get underway. We're just going to give everybody 30 seconds to find the links and come in and join us. But yeah, if you can see us, hear us, just pop something in the chat box. Human chat box is working. Sometimes we tell people to put stuff in the chat box, and then I get a message in the Q&A saying can't put anything in the chat box. But just let us know all is okay. And about you, Richard, I always get a bit nervous when I ask people to do this and nothing comes in the chat box. When here we go, they're coming in
I
now.
can hear you well. That's the main thing.
Excellent. Thank you, Rebecca. Pleased to hear that everything's working okay, and Neil as well. Great stuff. Thank you, everyone. Right, we're going to get underway. Thank you for joining us for our July app of the month. We're slightly earlier than normal because Richard is joining us from New Zealand this morning, so really appreciate that, Richard. We will be done on the hour, so if you have anything lined up at 11 o'clock, hang in till the end for us. We'll make sure we get you out and ready for your next meeting. I'm really looking forward to this. I joined Richard and the Spotlight team for an in-person event in London a few weeks ago, which was great. Richard and I had some great conversations that we're going to share with you today and expand in a bit more detail on that. But what we're really looking at is kind of what's going on with advisory. It's changing constantly. There are challenges, but also major opportunities ahead for us with the evolution of technology and AI. What do we need to do to get closer to our clients and deliver real value? So we're going to be exploring all of this for you this morning. So just to get underway, Richard, delighted to have you with me this morning. Do you want to just give a quick introduction to everybody in terms of who you are and where you're sitting at the moment?
Nice. Thanks, Will. Yeah, absolutely delighted to be here. Just back, as you know, from my London, New York trip. I'm missing the great weather and the great interactions I had on my northern progress. So back here in Wellington, NZ, we're across the harbour from Zero, and most people will kind of know me as the CEO of Spotlight Reporting and obviously one of the very early Zero partners, both as an accounting firm actually and as an app. So 25 years in the game. I've got a certificate on the wall just out of shot. Actually reminded me of my father getting a certificate. He was a chartered accountant for 50 years, so it's in the blood. So yeah, a fellow of the Chartered Accountants of Australia and New Zealand, global accountant, trotting around the world talking to accountants, and obviously been in software and trying to empower accountants for the last decade plus. So yeah, kind of well embedded in the industry.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard. And we'll kind of cover off Spotlight in a moment.
Yeah.
For those that don't know me, I wear a number of different hats. Today I'm wearing my App Advisory Plus hat. So I'm co-founder and director of App Advisory Plus. And our objective really is to help accountants pick the right technology for both you and your practices and for your clients. I'm also founder at Farnell Clark, recently became part of TC Group, so now TC Farnell Clark. So what are we going to talk about this morning? This is broadly the agenda. We're going to take you through all of these steps. So first of all, we're going to kind of have a look at how the advisory landscape's changed, because every accountant says they do accountancy and business advisory, but what does that actually mean? Richard's got 25 years of perspective here, so we're going to draw on that. I've got 20-ish, so we'll certainly share what we've seen, and particularly when we think about the kind of the accounting tech side of it and how that's driven change and what we can potentially do for clients right now. Richard's got tons of lessons learned, so we'll share those. We'll touch on clients' expectations, which are massively different now to even perhaps 5-10 years ago. We will share how some of the best firms around the world have scaled advisory services and ultimately monetized delivery of those services. We will talk about kind of how they've done that in terms of culture, structure, and process. And then the most important thing really is what does the next 12 months, 3 years, 5 years look like? What do you need to be thinking about in your firms now to make the most of advisory, add more value to clients, but also counter what AI is inevitably going to do to perhaps some of the core compliance work that we do. So that is the plan. During the course of the session, as a Q&A box, please do pop stuff in the Q&A box. Any questions, we'd love to answer them. Any general comments, observations, pop them in the chat box. Always good to share and get people involved in the conversation. So before we kick off, Richard, tell us a bit about Spotlight. Where did Spotlight come from? What do you do, and how do you do it?
Sure, sure. Thanks, Will. So Spotlight Reporting, we're 14 years in the game. We launched at XeroCon Taupo, can you believe, in 2011. So it was the first official XeroCon. There'd been a bit of a piss up at Rod's the year before that wasn't really an official XeroCon. And we were the first reporting, forecasting app, closely followed by our friends at Fathom, who were also at that conference. That was really annoying. I thought it was absolutely the first out of the gate, but they were there. And as we all know, there's a kind of a clutch of us now, consolidation, reporting, forecasting. We're the only ones doing some ESG reporting. We do aggregation, franchises, non-profits, industry specialist accounting, benchmarking. So a broad palette of apps designed to empower accountants who want to be advisors, essentially to do the Lord's work, move towards the light, monetize, grow, and have lives of purpose. So there's a broad kind of vision statement there, but founded by myself, my wife Julie, who's CFO. Really from it came out of our practice. We had an advisory practice here in Wellington, New Zealand. We were working with lots of entrepreneurs. We were 80% advisory, a little bit of compliance on the side, loving what we were doing. And actually, when Xero came along and the whole cloud accounting revolution flowered, we saw the opportunity to do something that could resonate far beyond these shores down here in the South Pacific and allow us to kind of work with accountants all around the world who wanted to do more and be more than just number crunchers.
Yeah, perfect. And you kind of support firms with a whole bunch of kind of education stuff around that as well, don't you? And access to
Absolutely.
support
So one of the
within that.
first things we did, we have salespeople, of course, but we have education, training, support. We have customer success. We have resources. I wrote a book back in the day when not many people were writing books. Well, now everyone's doing them. In
Yeah,
fact, I've
everyone
been
does it.
asking you for a
Everyone does
signed
it,
copy of your latest
Richard.
one. Um, So yeah, it's genuinely a mission, and I've got really good people. I mean, up in your neck of the woods, Mel Ars, our CS person. We've got Miranda and Co. Kirsten, been with us for a long time. So people who are trying to educate and stimulate, I suppose, advisory and accountants to become advisors. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been a really fun mission week. I mean, we're 14 years in, but I feel like we've just written the first few chapters. We're rolling a lot of AI across our products right now. I had our first AI release. We're doing integrations with other cool best of breed apps. So lots of goodness happening, and very driven by customer feedback and what we're hearing from, the 2000 plus accounting firms we deal with.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks, for that, Richard. Right, so I'm going to stop sharing slides now because we're gonna dive into the conversation.
Mm.
And you mentioned advisory only firm, so I mean that's probably the place to start if we kind of go back those 25 years. What was your thought process in terms of, I guess, almost bucking the trend in terms of, well, there's all these firms out there doing compliance, but actually we don't want to do that.
Oh,
Was that the start, or did you start doing that and then realize that there was more?
sheer fear was where I started. I still don't know how I became an accountant. My dad, as I mentioned, had the 50-year certificate on his wall. Um, Came out of uni in the early 90s. We all kind of looked around. We had commerce degrees back in the day. That was kind of the passport to a job. And you interviewed with lots of people. And I ended up in an accounting firm and got hired. So the next thing I know, I'm kind of sitting there in the Hessian cubicle like we all had, hopefully don't have so much now, doing tax returns with deadlines and having, I just, oh my God, I was blinking in the shock and dismay of that. And so I knuckled down, learnt the craft. But right from that early stage, Well, and this was kind of, I think before even advisory was a phrase bandied around, it was just like, we've got all these really, really good clients. And I was an audit at this stage. I was even on the kind of darker side of the moon. Um, and we're going out and ticking boxes and looking at receipts and whether they've been stamped and all that kind of rubbish. Why don't we do something useful? So it was almost in my ignorance and arrogance, and you know what we're like in our 20s, kind of thought we'd change the world. And I just thought, no, I want to do something useful. I want to do something purposeful with my life. I don't want to do tax returns and all that stuff. And I could tell that customers hated it. It was like going off to the proctologist or the dentist. You know, you kind of have to, but really, do you want to pay for that? No. It was always 6 months or 12 months after the event. So luckily, the firm I was at, which subsequently became a BDO firm, so it was a big firm. They had one or two people doing kind of other stuff, leaving the office, and they would stride out with their briefcase and look really important and glad to be out and about. And I attached myself to them and kind of became the shadow, and they were the people doing the kind of, it was called consulting in those days. So to cut a long story short, um, I kind of made my way up the food chain and became the consultancy services manager. And I spent most of my time convincing the partners that we should do more than compliance. So we didn't call it advisory then, but it was certainly, and this is my definition of advisory, because I know I'm going to ask that
Okay.
question,
Yeah.
is doing stuff we don't need to do, but we want to do.
Okay.
Doing value added work that the customer's happy to pay for rather than compliance that they must pay for and they must do. So, and I know there's always
So is that,
the
I just something on that, Richard. So
yes,
that's almost saying that's therefore discretionary spend.
yep,
So do you think that
yes.
some of the challenge is that as accountants we kind of find it hard to sell, and therefore discretionary spend we need to go through a sales process, whereas almost with compliance we kind of know somebody's got to do it. Um,
Oh, yep,
and
yeah, yeah. Yes, you're right. I think you've used the word sales process that upsets people.
yeah,
Um, So if we dial that back slightly, and because what I was going to say before the stormtroopers of compliance tackle me after this or put comments in the box, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do compliance. Of course, that's the bedrock of our profession. We should do that. We should make sure everyone's compliant, HMRC, etc., are happy. But golly, can't we do more? We're at the fulcrum of commerce. We learn, we observe, we train. We listen, hopefully we ask questions. Why would we cede our territory and our ability to advise and actually change lives to anyone else? So that's where the discretionary comes in. I mean, I would argue that it's turning the discretionary light bulb off and making it a necessity.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we shouldn't be thinking of it as, golly, it's discretionary for me to know what my cash flow is going to be over the next year.
yeah,
We shouldn't be thinking that to have a vague idea of the strategy of my business and the business model and the goals is discretionary. And I think often that's the hang up accountants have more than the customer.
yeah,
And therefore, if we're actually talking with the right language and having the right cadence of interactions, asking the right questions and listening, it actually isn't about sales process. I found through all these years of doing advisory that it sold itself.
yeah,
Once I engaged as a human to another human, and we
yeah,
had conversations about the future and about goals and all of those things. So
yeah,
I kind of learnt that intuitively quite early on in my career, luckily. And that was because I didn't want to do tax returns. I wasn't a great accountant. I didn't want to do audit. Um, in fact, I was one of those really annoying auditors that wanted to make lots of recommendations because I thought, why are we just ticking boxes? Why don't we tell them about stuff? And it really made the audit managers nervous because, of course, there's liability and all sorts of other things I didn't understand. So, luckily, I had a partner at this firm who believed in what I was talking about and was also quite engaged by wanting to make a difference and have those conversations where suddenly we were talking about personal goals and financial goals and did you want to see your kids, and how much money did you want to earn, and all those kind of other things. And because he took a punt on me, we were able to get out there and we did the gold, silver, bronze. Thank you, Ron Baker and value pricing. David Meister, the Trusted Advisor book. I don't know if you ever read that, but that was another touchstone in those days of how you should, I think the mantra was you want to earn the right to walk the corridors of your clients' businesses
Yeah.
because you're that important and useful to what they're doing. So we quite quickly grew accounting fees into advisory fees, 5, 10x what we had been charging, and were, the people that they wanted to see, not that they begrudged seeing once a year. And
Mm.
so that was really quite powerful. And because I was in a big firm, of course, you start heading up against the politics and you have to wait for partners to die before you can progress up the food chain. And unfortunately for me, the partners at the firm I was at all looked pretty healthy and like they might stick around for a while. So although I got offered an associateship, I buggered off to the UK actually. I went to London for 4 years, did consulting up there, had a wonderful time. Actually did consulting across private and public sectors. So that was a real eye-opener. Probably not for you Brits about the public sector, but for a Kiwi lad to come in and see what was happening in the public sector was quite interesting, NHS
Mm.
hospitals and things.
Mm.
And then came back to NZ and started my own advisory practice in 2001, actually. So that was we were kind of trying to be almost 100% advisory, if I'm honest. We didn't even
Yeah.
really promote the CPA, CA element. It was really perhaps just because of the way we dressed. People said, do you do accounting as well? And so we ended up kind of hiring one or two people to do the accounts whilst I did all the jazz hands kind of strategy and mentoring, cash flow
Yeah.
forecasting, business modeling, whiteboarding, strategy, retreats, all that kind of cool stuff. So yeah, value add. I think if you're doing advisory, golly, and you've done this well as well, you're only as good as your last gig, so you've got to add value. It can't just be a
Yeah.
trite thing that we trot out. You've got to add value each and every time because
Mm.
the last thing you want are people asking for a refund and going
Yeah.
back to just wanting the compliance. So
Yeah.
there's
Well,
lots of things I did to make that successful and lots of things I've seen other accounting firms do to make that successful, but I know we'll pick that up
great.
during the
Excellent.
course of our chat.
So 2001, 0,
Hmm.
2006,
They were
2007.
2006
Yeah.
where they
Okay.
came out. Yeah,
How did that change things?
serendipitously, I knew Hamish Edwards, who was one of the co-founders. Those of us who've been around for a while will remember Hamish. He actually came up to the UK to
Yeah, I
kind of
did a session
launch
with him in Accountex a couple
Zero
of years
UK.
ago,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that was lively.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's definitely a character. So Hamish and I kind of knew each other. I knew Doug, his father, who ran the practice. I think Doug did the work, and Hamish was the front man. Interestingly, I used to get rid of my bad clients to Doug and Hamish, and that's actually when I heard about Zero. So he probably won't admit to this, but I do talk in my book, and I share here that I used to cull my client base so that I didn't end up with compliance only, the slow payers, the assholes, the kind of people that we as accountants, because we're all lovely people, we put up with. No, I got rid of them. So I got rid of them to Hamish. So anyway, he felt grateful for getting all these rogues from my practice, and he took me out for lunch. And he said to me, I'm launching an online accounting system. And to my perpetual disgust, I kind of went, ugh, just what the world needs, yet another accounting system. And he did mention Rod Drury was involved. So Rod was already a little bit of a Wellington legend. He'd had a successful company already. So that did pique my interest. So I asked to hear more, and actually Zero quite early on hired a guy, Hamish Carter, who was a New Zealand gold medalist at the Olympics. He was a triathlon champ. And so we got him out really early on, 2006, to do a presentation to our client base. And we basically moved them all from MYOB to Zero within weeks. We just kind
Mm.
of made them. brute force. Xero was vaporware. It was beautifully designed, great people, vaporware. Luckily, we had relatively straightforward clients. But what was really interesting about that was there were lots of gaps, and Xero, the genius of Xero, I think, and I still tell them this, although I'm not sure the current crop believe me, was the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
they created this wonderful ecosystem largely because they had to, but they did also think about the API as a strategy and all the data going out. So we could see that reporting was a little bit ropey. They didn't have forecasting, they didn't have consolidation, etc. So because we were doing stuff in Excel and we were already presenting lots of charts and visuals as part of our advisory, we thought, why don't we build some software and we'll test it on our practice and our clients, which we did, and then we'll see what the Wellington accountants think. They all seem to quite like it. 2011 comes around, and Rod at the first XeroCon got me on stage and whispered in my ear as I was about to present my slides. Oh no, we don't do slides, Richard. You've got to demo it live. So I demoed Spotlight Reporting live with a lot of trepidation because it was very much early days. Luckily, it worked, and we signed up some of the firms at that very first XeroCon,
Right.
which was cool. So we kind of quite quickly we had clients exiting and doing, selling and doing things globally, and the rest of our fees we sold off, and we knuckled down on Spotlight Reporting,
Yep. Yep.
which was pretty cool. So yeah, Xero, I think were revolutionary, absolutely. Craig Winkler, who was the founder of MYOB, a Xero director, he's a shareholder with us too.
Mm.
Uh, lovely chap, does lots of charitable work. He had actually tried to do online stuff at MYOB, but never quite stuck. He didn't really have the backing of his
Mm.
shareholders and that. So Rod was very canny, and he was he's a great entrepreneur. Made that happen with Hamish's help, and he hired well.
Yep.
We all remember the early team and Gary and
Yep.
Chris Red and others. And so we were part of that. Well, we are part of that family, but we were part of the early days and going on the road shows and
Mm.
standing in Toowoomba with 5 people from Xero and 3 customers. We did that all around the world. And part of our story was having work. We built work papers, so we actually had another app, and we had that bought by Xero. So Rod made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and we were kind of putting on Xero t-shirts to talk about work papers on stage. In fact, launched at 2012 XeroCon in London. You were possibly there, Well.
Yep.
The UK version of work papers, and we did that because Gary had kind of complained that the UK was always the last cab off the rank for Xero. Not sure that was
Mm.
true. But I had an affinity with the UK and loved the UK accountants, so we made UK version of work papers the first one beyond
Yep.
the NZ, and
Yep.
launched that on stage there. So that was a lot of fun, and yeah, we just kept growing. We had a team in the UK quite early on. Actually, Darren Glenville,
Darren
who was at
Glanville.
Xero,
Yep.
was our first director of sales. Subsequently, was Fathom. Now,
Yep.
still friends, by the way. But yeah, wonderful chat. And Cara, who's now at Sage. It's just
Yes.
such
Very recently.
it's a small, kind of incestuous ecosystem, isn't it? But yeah, no, Xero's ecosystem was great. And golly, I just kind of wish I'd been in practice now.
Mm.
I don't know if you're the same. Obviously, I'd like to be a few years younger, but with the ecosystem and the integrations and AI, and I mean, I still got really excited just going paperless. In fact, we won it's out of shot, but I've got a sustainable business award over there because we were paperless and we offset our carbon emissions and all of that. Um, Imagine having a printer and paper now, faxes and yeah. So I think
Unbelievable.
what a wonderful time to be doing advisory,
Yep.
and AI is just making things faster, easier. You got to be careful. There's still
Yep.
I'm still a believer in humans, I have to say. Call me old school. But technology, automation, and AI have changed the game, lowered the cost of entry, um, in some ways lowered the cost of compliance and made that a bit of a knife fight. But if you're adding value, that human expertise and experience, then you can charge more, higher effective hourly rate.
Yeah, I mean, it won't be any surprise to know that I'm with you on that in terms of the human. Given the last book was called The Human Firm, um, but
Indeed.
I mean, just on this, and let's get into kind of some of the kind of what the best firms are doing. So the last question on this is like we've seen what Zero's done. How important is the evolution of that tech in terms of enabling us to have the data to drive better advisory? Because for me, it's always been we've got to have the data, and I think the biggest
Yeah,
shift
yeah.
is the ability to get, I call it live accounting data. It's never quite real time, but using pre-accounting tools, using bank feeds, and what I think said we built bank
Oh,
feeds so business
yeah.
owners can do a little bit every day. I talk to accountants all the time that are still doing bookkeeping on a quarterly basis. So it's like, come on, guys.
Yeah, no, that I mean it's critical. So bank feeds, uh, APIs. So the API is out, and obviously QuickBooks Online do this as well, and other other kind of leading softwares as well. So it's kind of a revolution that's spread. Um, Absolutely critical, and for me, it's not actually so much about real time, although having fresh, up to date data that can be then triaged and utilized is great. I talk about right time because
Mm,
obviously having in the accounting world, it kind of needs to be reconciled and you got to be a little bit careful of these kind of overnight feeds and things, and if they're uncurated. And this is also the care we have to take with AI because it does make things up, it does hallucinate.
mm,
So we've got to, as accountants, we need to be careful that we are secure, safe, our data's correct, and then we can have all sorts of fun with it. But no, it's huge. And you look at the ecosystem. I was mentioning to you before we came on here, we've got a carbon integration that's launching in a week or two. Good friends at Carbon, love them, what they're doing, really good practice management software. And you can do workflow tasks in Carbon and then do the work in Spotlight and push it back into their document management system. It's just kind of
brilliant.
the table stakes now, isn't it? Best of
Mm,
breed working together.
yep.
And I think being online, having that data transfer is key. I think we've all grown up from, having the server in the corner of the office to being ISO certified and GDPR and all of those things. In fact,
Mm,
I've got CISOs and CTOs and people I never thought I'd necessarily have who are in charge of all of this stuff, data protection officers, etc. But you've got to do that. So I think when I look back 25 years, and I'm going to sound ancient here, but when I started, we literally had one computer for the team of accountants that I was in. And we had a lady that came in overnight. Can you believe? She didn't actually like people, so it suited her down to the ground. And she would do our journal entries for us, and then we'd come in the next morning and whatever computer software we were using then had the journals done. Of course, if there's any mistakes, you had to wait till the next night for her to do the
mm,
work for you. And we had journal books. So we had paper-based journal books and a person doing that. That was only 25 years ago. So cloud, obviously in the noughties, zero QuickBooks Online, etc., and the ecosystem absolute. I think it's a massive revolution. I mean, when people say to me, there's the odd person online kind of, oh, we haven't changed that much. I think it's like night and day, absolute night and day. And now AI, giving us the opportunity to be more effective, more efficient. I mean, we're a little bit in the play cycle, aren't we? Learning what works and what doesn't.
yep. Yep.
Um, I think it's tremendously exciting, and I think all of the leading ecosystem apps are noodling away to see how they can build on their already kind of impressive
Yeah.
infrastructure
Yep.
and
Yeah.
yeah, so things have changed so much from the days when we talked about consulting into advisory value add. Now it's cloud enabled, and of course you're on a
Yeah.
you're off the coast of Scotland. I'm here in New Zealand. We're on Zoom. You're probably going to get the laptop out and do a quick, maybe a quick strategy for someone, are you, in between
Yeah. That's
webinars?
it.
I'm actually going to go home to bed because it's my bedtime. But but you can be a globe trotter. You can do work from anywhere. In fact, I do probably as much work on my phone running a global software company as I do in my office.
Yeah. So that's tech Richard. If you think about
Yeah.
clients, because obviously the other side of this is we need people that want these services. From what you've seen, have client expectations changed? Is there a greater readiness for this thing we call advisory now? I mean, I talk about the Amazon effect, and that means that people want stuff instantly. But I think what I'm
Yeah.
also seeing is we're seeing generational shifts, and those attitude shifts
Yeah.
are that people are much more. I, I think Gen Z, millennials are much better at valuing their own time, which I think is a
Yes.
is a really good trait to have. Which basically means that they're going to say, I don't want to do that. I kind of want somebody else to do
Yeah.
that, so I can focus on the
Yeah.
things that I want to do, and whether that's
Yeah.
work or whether that's family life or
Yeah.
whatever. So I think that drives a great opportunity for us. I mean, you've got partners delivering this stuff with clients all around the world. Yeah, is there anything in that? Is there a shift?
Yeah, look, I think it's a yes and a no, and I think a lot of our listeners will probably be in the same boat in that I think there is a generational shift, but I would also argue a lot of my best customers were the actually the kind of mid 50s to 60 succession exit, family dynamics, trusts, all of that stuff, wanting to maximize their value before exit. So there's kind of different
Okay.
ends of the spectrum. Um, so I think there's definitely an expectation around, can you do that? I think we have had economic headwinds in most countries. We had COVID. So I don't
Yeah.
think we've had an easy economic environment. So why I said yes and no, there's plenty of clients probably trying to save a buck as well. My argument's always been that often it's better to let those commodity priced driven clients go and find a home where they can have
Mm.
the cheap and cheerful tax return and not much else. And you should focus
Yeah.
more of that time on the high effectively hourly rate clients. And I do think the accounting profession and
Mm.
those who are new to advisory need to get over the misnomer of that they're going to have customers come knocking on the door asking for strategy and
Yeah.
ESG and a cash flow forecast for £2,000 and mentoring every month. That has to grow organically and be positioned in the right way. And that's where having conversations, human to human, asking the right questions, listening, it kind of becomes a bit of a snowball effect. I would often
Yeah.
start with $3,000 clients that became $6,000 that ended up 5 years later being $50,000 or $60,000 a year,
Yeah. Yeah.
not batting an eyelid because they were getting that value and their businesses were growing gangbusters. They were happier on the
Yeah.
home front, or whatever it happened to be. But you don't kind of necessarily go in with that play.
No.
Good luck to you if you can get it. Sometimes you get away with it, but you've got to earn the right to walk the corridors, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
David Meister would say. You've got to value price, as Ron Baker and others would argue, in the right way, offer some options, but you've got to have the conversations to get there.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a degree of marketing, there's a degree of selling, but I actually prefer to think of it as human to human conversation.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and
It's
you
it's
you
built
obviously
it's
expound
it's
that in your
building those
book.
yeah, it's building those relationships, isn't it? And I mean I
Yeah,
asked you what advisory meant. You've kind of said that. For me, it's I'd say we will be doing advisory, and every client we've got picks up the phone and asks every question they've got. And that's just about building the relationships so that you are always front of mind and thinking about the services that you can deliver that get you closer to those
yeah,
clients in the first place, so that you're always at front of mind. And I think the challenge that most accountants have is we sell what we and I use the word sell again there. We sell what we think clients want to buy rather
yeah,
than actually selling what clients need. And the challenge I think there is that it takes time to help clients understand what they actually need. So it's
yeah,
easier to just sell them
yeah.
what we think they want. Um, so it's just reframing that a little bit, isn't it? In terms of like,
Absolutely, and I think that comes back to cadence. So I used to meet most of my clients either monthly or bi-monthly. And some of the best ones, some of those big fees I was talking about, I might have done something for free. And I know that sends an uncomfortable tingle up a few accounting spines. But I would sometimes do a free strategy or, just to get the ball rolling,
mm,
or a free spotlight, for example. And I was saying to someone today on my team, actually, I said, look, the reports and the exec summary and the forecast and things we do, they're all valuable in themselves, but they're also a means to an end. They're a conversation starter, but
Yeah.
they're also a monetization engine if the accountant is clever enough to see that and positions that in the right way. And what I mean by that, so we were talking about the recommendations part of the exec summary, and I said, look, here's a recommendation that I gave. You should have a cash flow forecast. It's that time of the year. You're getting a lot of pressure from supply chain around sustainability. You should look at doing a sustainability strategy, maybe measuring some ESG stuff. I think I suggested an advisory board because we were now starting to grow between the kind of 1
Mm.
million to whatever million we were at. And I said, look at those 3 recommendations I made to this client. They're all actually service offerings, as well as being genuine, the
These are
right
things you do.
advice. Because, of
Yeah.
course, if they're not the right advice, you're going to get kicked into touch
Yeah.
quite quickly. So, essentially that just goes off to your proposal.
Mm.
Cash flow forecast. Yes, I understand that. I want to raise some money with the bank, or I want to have an overdraft. Cool. How much? And you
Yeah.
quote.
Yeah.
Strategic plan makes sense. Just sustainability strategy. Yeah, I'm in forestry. I'm in fishing, or I need one of those.
Yeah.
So if you're having the right conversations and you're making the right recommendations off the back of those conversations, it kind of sells
Exactly.
itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it removes the fear and this whole salesman kind of complex that some accountants have. I have to say, normally the accountants who are stuck in compliance land.
Yeah.
Occasionally you get accounting firms, and we have them sometimes who subscribe to Spotlight, who I don't know quite how, but they end up with one client who deserves advisory and client, in their entire portfolio, and they get pushed back and then they cancel and all that kind of stuff. But this is a lack of confidence. Sometimes it's the old time excuse. We have a hashtag ban excuses here at Spotlight. We're pretty tough up the guts Kiwis. And by that I mean, look, you've got to have, coming back to what makes a successful advisory firm, you've got to have intent, you've got to have commitment, you've got to if you can't sort out your own time, if you're wasting time on the people that you should be giving away to that accountant up the road who doesn't want to do scary
Mm.
advisory. And that was the best thing I ever did. And again, that was serendipity. I had in the building I was in, Francis Consulting was our imaginative title. Well, we had a compliance accountant down the corridor, and I used to give him, if I wasn't giving it to Hamish, our rogue accountant, our rogue clients, our boring compliance, 2 grand a year clients. And if anyone wanted anything sexy or interesting, he would get scared and he'd send them to us. So we just had this symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was really good. It meant I wasn't wasting time on people who didn't want to pay for the value I wanted to offer.
Yeah.
He was happy doing the compliance and being a machine and doing that. So yeah, I think having that intent, the time management, the prioritization is so important. I was kind of this. Well, I had my wife and I. We were largely in alignment, which was great. We're still working together after 25 years, so we must agree most of the time. Um, if you've got partners, you have to bring them on the journey too, or
Yeah.
they have to give you permission to run a practice within a practice. That sometimes
Yeah.
works.
Mm.
You've probably had that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've had to drag people on the journey with you, but that is one of the biggest roadblocks to a compliance practice breaking out into being a hybrid or an advisory practice, is 1 or 2 partners refusing to move with the zeitgeist of the times.
Yeah, yeah. So I think the key point to draw out of this is this idea that you got to have conversations, because I get firms talk to me and they say, "Oh, well, I've spoken to my clients about management reporting, but I just can't get people to want to pay for it."
Yeah.
And the challenge is nobody's going to pay for management reporting for the sake of
As
paying
soon
for
as you said
management
those 2
reporting.
words, well, I'm thinking, I'm not paying
That's
for that.
it. Exactly. So the challenge is we've got to go to those clients and say, hey, what does a good year look like for you this year? Well, it'd be great if I can take another 20 grand out of the business. Okay, so if we can help you do that, is that a
Yeah.
good thing? Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, here's what you need to do. You need to do this, this, this,
Yeah.
and this is what it's going to cost. So that's all about, isn't it? Like asking the questions, listening to the answers. That unlocks it because then it isn't a sale. If somebody's just told you what they want and you're just
You've
going to
just set a
say,
goal with that client, Will, and you've set one of the most powerful goals in Christendom, and that is how much more money do you want to take out of the business?
yeah,
Because of course, as we know, and most of our listeners will know, almost all the SMB owners of the world take out enough to subsist on. They probably pay their staff more than they get, and they don't really have a roadmap for, how does that 60,000 quid become 120,000?
yeah,
And you can start doing simple forecasts, scenarios. You set the goals, and then you monitor quarterly or 2 monthly, whatever it happens to be, with a spotlight report or a rolling forecast, or you have a dashboard. I mean, some of our most successful accounting firms, we've got a cracker of one here in Wellington, actually, suburban firm, couple of partners, 7 staff. They just did a spotlight dashboard with their tax returns one year. And we talk about dashboard as our gateway drug. Simple drag and drop. You can do it in a minute or two. I think they did 70 of them, and then said, hey, would you like to get more of that and start talking about your goals and earning more money out of your business, etc. And they graduated to reports and forecasts, and now they're doing 50, 60 of each
yeah,
every month.
yeah,
And they're a small suburban firm. So the firms you kind of think, I can't do advisory at scale, it's actually just, as I said earlier, that commitment, that intent, having a strategy about it, of course.
yeah,
Do some promotional stuff, wet the whistle, get people interested, and you'll get the two or three who go, yeah, actually, I do want to earn more money. I do want to spend more time with the kids. I do
yeah,
want to talk about my personal goals, my business goals. By the way, I'm onto my second heart attack. I never sleep. And we all know business owners are in that category. So some of the work I did was transformational. I'm not saying that to be arrogant. It was transformational for me because I'm a business owner too, and I make mistakes, and sometimes I need help. But to be able to help people to sleep better, to see their kids, to earn more money, to exit their
yeah,
business with dignity and that paycheck.
mm,
Um, and that's so empowering to be doing that an advisor. And yes, accountants do that, but I think sometimes that's in the peripheral vision and
yeah.
just flies on by. Whereas advisors, particularly if you've got the value added ethos, you kind of have to focus there. That's your job.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've got two questions, one of which I'm going to answer now. The second one, we're going to touch on, because I think one thing we really do need to just talk about is around kind of process here, because I think lots of firms
Yeah.
might say, I'm doing this work, I just don't charge for it, if they're really honest, or I'm doing this work and it's part of a monthly fee, and therefore value isn't being attached to the work they're doing. So it'd be good to talk about pricing,
Mm,
and then I want to make sure we can just talk about like what's the future, why is this critical for firms now. Neil's asked a
yeah.
question: do you see
Mm,
ESG as a big opportunity, as a growing service line and a differentiator for accountants? Neil, firstly, my take on this, I think there's three growth areas for accountants right now. One is data analytics and data science. One is system implementation, system
mm.
advisory, and the third is ESG. What I don't know yet is what the opportunity is for the ESG. I just know it's an opportunity, but Richard probably does know what the opportunity is for ESG.
Yeah, I'd be slightly biased here, because we have an app called Spotlight Sustain. Early stage, and look, ESG is early stage in one sense. Obviously, it's been around sustainability and non-financial metrics, planet, people, community, and all of that. Really, really important. I mean, I'm quite engaged by that. As I mentioned, we won a Sustainable Business Award 15, 16 years ago. Um, so I think, our Global Advisory Trends survey that's available on the Spotlight Reporting website surveyed 1,000 firms. 12 to 14% are either doing it or trying to do it. It is early stage, and I think part of the problem we have is we're still waiting for some of the data and the kind of trusted sources of advice to come through. There are some good advisory firms coming through. You got some in the UK, small handful. Um, we're actually investing a lot of time and effort in AI models around Spotlight Sustain right now. So as opposed to all the data feeds we get into the other tools, because there aren't a lot of great data APIs for ESG yet, we're actually using AI to go out and look at industry, region, benchmarks, advice. What's the legislation? What things? What are supply chains saying? What should you be thinking about? So that's coming quite soon and sustain. So I think that will open up a door for those who aren't at that really big crunchy end of town where they have to comply with scope one, two, three, and all that kind of stuff. But they are getting supply chain pressure, they are getting Gen Z pressure to be transparent. There's health
Mm.
and safety pressure, gender, pay, or there's lots of different angles here, obviously carbon footprint and stuff. So I think yes, it's coming like AI, get informed, educate yourself. And if I was to focus on two areas of education, if I was in practice now, and I do this um, as CEO of Spotlight, because I'm talking to practice leaders all the time, I'm focused on educating myself around AI and ESG. They're the
Mm.
two
I think it's clear.
things that I think are mission critical over the next 5 to 10 years. And I agree with you too around how we use data and present it, and obviously systems, system integrations, process efficiency. How do we run our practices? How do we get better at everything we do is also a really interesting kind of service offering area. So there's definitely gold in them there hills for those who are prepared to
Mm.
buy the pick and go and chip
Yeah.
away.
And they're all things that are non-core for what most accountants do right now,
Hmm.
which is the other point here that and we're jumping ahead a little bit to the future bit here, but I think that's the reality. The future is the things that as humans we can do that the AI still has some way to go, and it's that human empathy and everything
Can
else.
do and should do well. I think we
Yeah.
use a lot of can and could in our profession, and I'm not saying everyone should, but I think if you're going to be a future relevant accountant, again, come back to that question I asked earlier around who is better placed than you as the chartered accounting, the business advisor, the person who business owners go to be helping them think about what other apps should they be using, what
Mm,
systems could they deploy, should they be interested in ESG, how can we help educate them, how can we get them
mm.
warmed up to that, than us. Are we
Yeah.
going to let them go to a business coach? Are we going to let them be ignorant and potentially fall over because of that? Is the bank going to tell them? Is a lawyer going to tell them? Hell
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Um, we should.
Yeah.
So
It's down to us.
my mission has been not so much around what we could do, but what we should do as a profession to be as useful as possible. In my Transform book, I talk about the usefulness gap. So not so much the expectation gap, but actually because I think that's an A versus B question. A
Mm,
usefulness gap is actually as the A, how can I actually just do more useful work with my knowledge, experience, and expertise? And as everyone who's on this call will know, if you've been in the front lines of running an accounting firm 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you've learned a lot. You've learned a lot
yeah.
the hard way. You've gone to a lot of courses, you've done a lot of professional training, you've been a general practitioner, pastor, whatever you want to call it, to probably 100 or 1,000 businesses. You've had to put up with your partners and your managers and your staff. We're actually a vast reservoir of learnt lessons.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we need to share that more and and monetize
Absolutely.
it and unashamedly monetize it.
I'm with you on that one, which leads us quite nicely. Second question, or sorry, the first question actually was from Eloise. I don't know if you've seen that, Richard, but there's a bit there. But essentially, Eloise is saying doing this kind of work with a client, new client, spent a huge amount of time, loved what they were doing, but it was time consuming, took away from everything else. How do you manage kind of too much time on one client? I'm guessing it's kind of fairly early stage. And how do you know if you spend too much time on one client? I guess you can never spend too much time with one client if they're paying you the right amount to spend that time
Yeah,
with them.
I was going to ask Eloise that. I think, look, ultimately, I probably had 20 clients that really mattered. if I can put it that way, commercially. Um, Probably 50 overall. And that helped me and my wife earn six-figure salaries, and we had and we were little, we were a boutique firm. Um, but if that client, I mean, I wouldn't be exposed to one, to be fair. I think you want to have a bit of a wider client base than that. But I would argue that it's not about quantity, it's about quality. If you're monetizing that correctly and your effective hourly rate is still high, it's not such a problem. But if you are getting consumed perhaps by one client and your other clients are then falling by the wayside, that's a problem.
Mm.
So yeah, you've
Yeah.
got to be a little bit careful. One of the things I learned actually um, at my big firm that I was running consultancy at, we got a little bit excited by one or two clients too. And even though we'd 5 or 10x their fees from what they used to be charged, we leaned in too far. So we had I well remember having a $60,000 client, and you'd think there'd be lots of headroom there. We ended up doing 100 grand's worth of services because we went all in. And we learnt to pare that back the following year, because
Mm.
of course in a big firm you get told off for that kind of thing. So yeah, you've got to be careful. You've got to make sure it still works for you, and it shouldn't become all consuming.
Yeah.
I don't know what you did, Will, but sometimes it's about referring people on around specialist services. Sometimes it is about just pulling back a little bit.
Yeah.
And you've certainly got to be careful. You mentioned this too, Will, earlier, around the phone jockeys who are, unless you've monetized that and you've got a decent retainer, you've got to manage that. Otherwise, your phone will be ringing day or night. And you've got to have some rules around that too.
Yeah. Yeah. So how firms successfully scaling advisory? I mean, you said there, Richard, 20 clients. I mean, is
Yep.
that scale? I mean, the nature of the work you're doing is
It can be
working
a
in
million
this
dollar
very 20 clients.
practice. I can tell
Mm.
you that. 20 clients can
Yep.
be $1 million practice. So it's all relative. And again, if you're, I mean, what I used to do was ask clients 3 business goals, 3 personal goals, 3 financial goals. So if you're doing that discipline yourself, scale to you might be salary. Scale to you, I mean, scale to me was actually I just wanted a six-figure salary, but I wanted to have holidays, I wanted to travel, I wanted to see my family and all those kind of things. So scale can mean different things,
Mm.
to different people. So I think being careful about, you don't need to grow because people should tell you you need to grow. You might want to grow profit. You might want to grow
Yeah.
time. There's all sorts of answers to that. So, but getting back to your question and what I suppose traditionally would grow a practice, having a really clear idea of what your target market is and going after that, finding where the antelopes roam,
Mm.
so to speak, and making sure that you're in the long grass, waiting for them. But also having that cadence of conversations. So that's process, isn't it, really? Having
Yep.
the tools that
Absolutely.
can help empower you, like Spotlight, and there's others, of course. Um, and knowing what services you can offer and what the fair price is for those. So if
Yeah.
you've got the right target market and the right service matrix, then it becomes a gap analysis. What services am I offering? Can I actually offer more to my existing clients who already know and love me? Do I need to market? Do I need to get more clients? I,
Yep.
I would argue that so many practices have more fees left sitting on the table than
Totally.
they're earning because they're
Yeah.
not having the conversations and the regular interactions. And
Yep.
sometimes those regular interactions, as you know well, they might be, and we used to do this, they might be the drinks. Um, I remember Steph Hines, who's one of our best customers, been
Mm.
growth-wise in Australia, really bit of a legend in growing her accounting practice. She did call it something cooler than this, but she had tradie drinks after
Yeah.
5 on a Friday, I
Yeah.
think in Newcastle, Australia, where she's
Yeah.
from. And she'd get all the tradie clients in over a beer on a Friday. And for the price of, 2 or 3 dozen beers, it is Australia, um, you know, uh, should be circulating with their team, and they'd kind of,
Yep.
get more clients, they get word of mouth, they'd basically end up selling more services just through
Yeah.
being humans and putting on a barbecue and a beer. So there's
Yeah.
different ways to do that. But yeah, definitely, we've talked about some of the other things, having that aspiration, having the intent, really strict on time prioritization, knowing your target market and going after that, not just anyone with a heartbeat and a wallet.
Yep.
That's a danger sign for accountants, just taking anyone. When you do find you do that, I did that. I ended up with my dirty dozen. As I said, I got rid of them to Hamish. Get rid of them.
Yep.
I think I said this in London, Will. I asked people to put their hand up. Who's sacked multiple clients? And I don't.
Yep.
Did you put your hand up? I don't know if anyone.
There weren't many, that's for sure.
Steve might have from Clarity. I don't
Mm,
know. Not many people put their hand up, and I thought, golly, you've all got a dirty dozen
mm,
that you're
absolutely.
wasting your time and your precious life force on.
Yeah.
Get rid of them and focus on the best. And if you
Yeah.
do that, then it's just following the process.
Yeah.
Human interaction, use the tools that will empower you, keep educating and remaining relevant. That's really important.
Mm.
But golly, has AI just fast-tracked all of this as well?
Segued nicely into the last question. I mean, you guys have done the global trend analysis report for a number of years now.
Yeah,
Most
yeah,
recent one, we're going to share a QR code for that in just a moment. Anybody wants to
lovely.
read it. What's that telling us in terms of what the future holds and what are the things that firms need to be doing right
Yeah.
now to remain relevant, I guess is the key.
Well, the
Um,
really important thing, it's a great question, because we've done three of those. We do them every 2 years. And every year, the shift of how many firms are kind of a hybrid of advisory and compliance and doing more virtual CFO work, cash flow forecasting, system integration, ESG, is moving 3 or 4 percentage points every time. So more of the industry is moving along that kind of advisory tech disruption curve.
so everybody's
The
competition is doing more, which
Exactly,
is
they're all doing more. It's not. It's kind of a tortoise in here. So no one, no one's kind of necessarily bursting through the gates because we're a conservative profession. It takes time, to move. But there's definitely movement. There are definitely more people who are seeing themselves as progressive and offering um, a plethora of services. There's more people getting into virtual CFO, more people using AI to look for those efficiency gains. So,
Mm,
and I'm not sharing that to create any fear. It just means keep moving, keep educating, keep investing. Lean on your software vendors. I mean, the biggest frustration for me as CEO of Spotlight Reporting in the 2,000 firms we deal with is training you lot. We have all of our packages have training, and we often get the one training done on reporting or whatever, and we say, "Hey, we'll come back and do a forecasting," and they go, "Yeah, yeah, we'll get back to you." And it's like it's part of it. We want you to do high value cash flow forecasting, consolidation, all those extra bits and pieces. But you've got to give up some time. You've got to let us do that. And I'm sure most software vendors would be the same. When I was doing the AI webinar earlier today with Inbal down here in Australia, um, she was saying, invest in AI, get paid subscriptions, let your team play, have a policy. Yes, have guardrails, absolutely. Don't start throwing client data out there, but invest in educating and engaging the team. So, yeah, I think that's what's coming through also in our global trends report. It's hard to hire, so invest in your team. Get
mm,
people who are curious, get people who can have conversations with humans. Yes, we all need the people who can sit in the back room with a flickering light bulb doing tax returns. That's fine. But we also need the people who can be successors to us and talk
absolutely.
to humans. Um, and look, I think most people coming out of university and are digital AI natives now, aren't they? They've
Yeah,
all they've all kind of written their essays using AI, so they're going to be
completely.
they're going to be expecting a
Completely.
subscription to ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah, what an exciting time.
it's
I'm
hugely
excited
exciting.
by the global trends I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Um, Interestingly, pricing is always like a top three. How do we price? And
Mm,
I think you do have to price with a degree of confidence.
yeah.
Um, and it's like our customers. I used to say, do an annual pricing review. You've just got to do it, and you will be more worried about the pushback than your customers will, because
Always.
customers
I say that
get
all
it.
the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
the barriers. So
Yeah.
the Global Trends Report is that it's well worth a read. So scan the QR code if you haven't done so already. We'll share a link to that. We're going to send the recording and the slides around to everybody who registered. So you'll get another link to get this. If you want more information on App Advisory Plus or Spotlight, these QR codes will take you to the right places. Richard, if anybody wants to pick up and contact you, what's the best way to do
Yeah,
that?
look, I'm always happy for anyone to contact me, Richard at spotlightreporting.com. I'm also, as I mentioned, I'm rewriting Transform the Advisory Playbook. We've got AI and ESG chapters and things coming in. So if there's anything people want in there or any suggestions or questions, just fire stuff through to me. If you're in the UK, we've got a team there ready, willing, and able to help. So yeah, more than happy for anyone to reach out to myself or the team.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard. And most importantly, thank you to everybody who's joined us. We are 1 minute over, so we haven't done bad at all. Richard, thank you for staying up. I know
Thanks,
it's
Will.
your
Absolute
bedtime
pleasure.
now in New Zealand, but thanks for joining me. We'll circulate all the recording to everybody. If you have any questions, do reach out to Richard or I. Richard's giving you the email. Find us both on LinkedIn as well. But thank you for taking time to join us. Hope you found it useful. Thank you, Richard, and the rest of your team
Pleasure.
for helping facilitate this. And sleep well.
Awesome. Thanks,
Thanks.
Will, and thanks everyone for coming along.
Thanks, everybody. Take care, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much indeed.